next up is a panel entitled New Ad Formats, the Next Generation. I believe we have everyone here. The moderator is, I hope I get this right, Emil, Kjaehr. We also have Dan Anahory from Real Media Now, David Rosenberg from Vungle, the return of Kristan Facey was on earlier from AudioMob. And I think we've got everyone here. So Emil, are you there? Hello, he's coming, he's here. And then I will hand over to this examination of new ad formats. It's been one of the key themes today. Hello, Emil.
Hi there, nice to be here.
Nice to speak to you. I'm gonna step out now and let you work through the introductions of your panel. Okay.
Excellent, thank you. So, hi everyone, welcome to this panel. This is a really exciting time for me because I'm coming into this panel from the perspective of actually being a developer at a game studio. My name is Emil, I'm the product manager at Funday Factory. So my perspective on this is basically coming into it from the balancing perspective of trying to balance development time to build the games, but also working out how should I monetize the game effectively. So I'm really excited about this panel, not just for you, the audience, but also for personal reasons. And over the next 40 minutes, we'll cover high-level trends, what's happening with new ad formats, and why we as developers should care. And of course, how to best approach this in a good way. And to help us guide us through this journey, we have a rock star lineup of experienced panelists who will hold our hands and carry us through it. So let's start with a short introduction from each of our awesome panelists. I would really like you guys to shortly introduce who you are and what your tech can do. And you've already, if you've been here since the morning, you've already heard from both Kristan Rivers and Kristan Facey. So I feel like we could be off to a good start if we start with David Rosenberg, who's Senior Product Manager at Vungle.
Awesome, thank you. Nice to meet everyone. So yeah, I'm David Rosenberg. I'm a Senior Product Manager focusing on ad formats at mobile ad network Vungle. Overall, the company works with advertisers to reach and engage users across the mobile app landscape, then work with publishers to help them monetize their in-app content. From an ad format perspective, we do everything from banner ads to those full screen ads, sometimes with playable ads as well, reaching over 1 billion unique devices every single month.
Thank you, David. And Dan Anahory, Head of BizDev and co-founder at Real Media Now.
Hi, my name is Dan Anahory. As Emil said, I'm the Head of Business Development and co-founder of Real Media Now. We provide in-game help videos for mobile and web games that are monetized through banner and video ads. Really looking forward to talking more about this in this panel.
Thank you. And Kristan Rivers, AdInMo.
Hi there, I'm Kristan, CEO of AdInMo. We do in-game advertising, so dynamic in-game advertising. Imagine it's the billboards in racing games or puzzle games where it's the puzzle pieces themselves or ad units, or fashion games where it's the fashion backgrounds.
Excellent, thank you. And finally, we have Kristan Facey from AudioMob.
Hi people, I'm Kristan. I'm the founder of AudioMob, and what we do is we provide non-intrusive audio ads within mobile games.
Excellent. So listen, guys, there's almost more ad SDKs now than there's users. And here you guys are with new tech and new standards and trying to sort of carry us onwards into the future. What steps should we as studios and what steps should developers take to sort of research and identify which type of ad solution is the right one for them? David, can you start?
Thanks. So yeah, you definitely want to start early with your game development. I think a lot of developers out there already have their games out there, so you can also integrate ads really at any point in the life cycle of your product. But you really want to make sure that the ad experience fits in with the actual in-app experience that you've got, right? If you've got a app that allows for rewarded ads, then we really encourage you guys to utilize full screen rewarded ads. A lot of our publishers have seen a lot of success there. So those full screen rewarded video ads, often with playables, which we've seen tremendous success of over the past couple of years, as ads have gone from very static to video to playable to really actually immersive. That's where we've seen a lot of success recently, where we actually kind of transport you into the advertiser's app world. Additionally, I think there's a lot of opportunities as well for some less intrusive ad experiences as well. While you're actually playing the game, it may be better to see a banner type of ad as well, which allows you to continue playing the game, but also engage in an ad experience if you'd like. So yeah, there's a lot of different options in there. You can incorporate, I think, one of the most important things is you should be incorporating multiple ad experiences through your app and not just focusing on one.
Yeah, and I think Kristan, Facey from AudioMob, that's something that you covered in your talk as well. The need to sort of not see it as sort of, you can only pick one solution, but there's actually a plethora of solutions, and you need to take steps to sort of work out which one is the right. Can you go a little bit more in depth about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've got so many different. There's 2.7 billion gamers, right? So you've got lots of different games that appeal to lots of different people. And the monetization solution to use, it shouldn't really just be one or the other. You should use as many as is applicable to that audience and the genre. And in short, it's you're concentrating on making a really, really great game, and you should put as much effort into your monetization as well as it now starts influencing design. So an example is, what is the game type? What are the user stats around acceptance? So it's not just the users around the game, but around a concept as well, such as sports, MMOs versus some other kind of genre. Really look at how the audience is being monetized for that specific genre, and then you can start thinking more about how you can incorporate these different monetization solutions as well.
That makes a ton of sense. And Kristan from AdInMo, can you sort of elaborate on what sort of metrics developers should look at to evaluate whether their games are performing? Coming from a developer's perspective, I've looked at everything from engagement rates to ad impressions per DAU, and I think looking at the individual differences that Kristan is touching upon as well with sports and MMOs just muddies the waters even more. Where would you start?
Yeah, that's interesting. There's no one answer to that. Look, all developers, all publishers have SDK fatigue. We know that, right? As you said, yet another SDK to integrate. And I think for these new types of ad units that many of us represent here, the question now is where in that life cycle, where in the product development life cycle do you start thinking about this? Our own experience, and I can only guess that AudioMob has probably had similar, and Real Media Now has probably had similar, is we started off just in like racing games and sports games where they'd already put fake billboards into these things. So it was really obvious to kind of just layer in AdInMo ads into that. Now we find the kind of really interesting, and that still happens, but we find the really kind of interesting experiences are happening where we get further earlier into the development process, into the game design process, as opposed to being layered on maybe in soft launch or even in hard launch. And so to your question on metrics, to a large degree, it's difficult to name one metric because maybe it depends on the game genre. Are you looking for reduced churn? Are you looking for playtime? The metrics that we consider when we talk to developers, certainly playtime is a big one. The longer that we can have a game player playing and we're playing that game experience and we're showing ads within that helps us as an ad unit. ARPDAU is a big one for us. I think eCPM has always been a challenging one because the definition of an impression for an in-game ad versus an interstitial ad or versus a banner ad, that definition is very different, and it's not really apples to apples when you're looking at CPM. So ARPDAU uplift is one that we like, and we have a pretty significant ARPDAU uplift that we offer to developers when they start integrating. So that's probably the metric that we think about the most.
That makes a ton of sense. And Dan, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I completely agree with what everyone said. I think, from our point of view, when we're speaking to developers, completely agree. Everyone gets SDK fatigue and, which SDK should you use? And I completely agree with everyone else here that, you should try as many as possible. I think that, it's not a case where, Vungle, AdInMo, and AudioMob are competitors. I think they're complementary services. And I think the other thing that you've got to really look at, especially when looking at monetization, is the effects on retention. Obviously, that depends on the type of game, the genre, hyper casual, casual, mid-core. But I think that if you look at something like AudioMob with audio ads, and I imagine probably the same with AdInMo and Vungle, is that sometimes, really intrusive advertising can have a big effect on retention. And overall, you might make, some small money in the short term, but in the long term, your retention goes down and you therefore make less money. So I think, the combination of, making a good amount of money and also at least not detracting from retention. I think with AudioMob, they've seen some statistics which actually increase retention slightly with their audio ads, which I think is, a great benefit of, a great way to monetize.
So if I can keep a hold of you, Dan, for a minute, that's really interesting. So what you're saying is that there are actually solutions where, we can balance it so it doesn't become, an ad experience where that detracts from the experience, but rather it also fixes other issues. Is that something where you've seen particularly that's true in, let's say, retention or engagement time more than others?
Yeah, so for instance, with us at Real Media Now, we provide, in-game help videos. So if a user is stuck on a level in a game, typically what will happen is they'll get, they'll try it a number of times and they'll either churn or they'll, go on YouTube and look for a help video and, potentially get distracted. And that could potentially cause that player to not come back to the game. So if you look at solutions like us, which is, in-game help videos, so you actually find out how to, beat the level or find a hidden object or whatever it is within the game. So you get that kind of added bonus of, making money from ads whilst also increasing retention. At the very least, the thing with kind of rewarded video and also AdInMo as well is probably kind of, I don't know the statistics on it, but I imagine it's probably at least the same. It has no effect on retention, or as definitely, or potentially an increase compared to something like interstitials or something like that, which potentially could, reduce retention. I don't know if Kristan has any.
I think we lost you there, but which Kristan?
Sorry, I meant Kristan AdInMo. Apologies.
Right. That was actually, sorry, this was actually something that we talked about before starting this panel, that, Kristan really emphasized to me that it's important that I lead with, Kristan from AdInMo or Kristan from AudioMob, because otherwise confusion would be total, as you can just see. So yeah, sorry, Kristan, go ahead.
Yeah, I think if you want to start a new company in this space, you have to have a name that sounds like Kristan, and your company name has to start with A. That's the only way you're going to be successful here. Yeah, look, we've certainly seen that. And again, I don't want to make kind of sweeping statements, because you can integrate traditional video ads and traditional ads really well or really poorly. And you can integrate AdInMo type ads really well or really poorly. Where we've seen it, though, is that the best developers do this really well. And obviously our dream one day is that AdInMo ads and other types of in-game ad units are so good and monetize so well that developers don't need to have the interstitial videos. That's our dream. I don't know that we're ever going to get there, but certainly that's our kind of viewpoint is it would be great if we could get to the space where we're not having to interrupt that experience. We're not asking users to click out of that game experience. There must be a way for us to advertise to gamers for them to pay for the game effectively through advertising, but without breaking that whole game experience.
That makes sense. And I think, Kristan, you touched upon something, Kristan from AdInMo, you touched upon something really important there. You said that the best developers integrate, just basically the integration is done really well. And to that point, I think it could be interesting to hear a little bit from all of you, your thoughts around sort of when do developers, like when should we as developers start integration? Should it be at the tech launch, the soft launch stage? Should it be something that we look at sort of iterating throughout our live ops by A/B testing? What sort of examples do you have of that working well? I think, David, I'd like you to start with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we always recommend that developers, think about monetization from the very beginning. I think it was said earlier, right, that, you want to put a lot of effort, obviously, into making a really fantastic game, a really fantastic experience. But, you obviously want to return on your investments as well. So I think you need to be thinking about that app experience. So, whether you're talking about, if you're a type of game where you're going to have, where you want to have really high retention, then, talking about some of these less intrusive formats, I think is important. Where we found tremendous success is with our rewarded or our opt-in ads. So those are still full screen ads, but the user is really opting into that experience. And we found with a lot of developers, right, that can help them bridge the gap between users who will never pay for anything within an app. And, realistically, for many games, that's the majority of users, and sort of their IAP whales that spend a lot of money within apps. So it really lets them kind of continue, as was just said by Kristan, to continue monetizing through ads, also maintaining their retention. Now, if you're a developer going in knowing that your game is going to have a very short life cycle, which a lot of hyper casual games do admittedly have, then that interstitial experience may work very well. So you've seen a lot of those hyper casual games that throw a lot of interstitial ads, a lot of banner ads, etc. Because they know that retention is generally quite low from those apps. So it's really more of a monetization focus during the life cycle of that app, which is, like I said, fairly short. So thinking about it from the beginning, but then also thinking about, what type of app you want to make will really determine the type of ad experience. And you should be continuing to test that, as you go live, and you should feel free as well to change it up. And also, as was just said, you can continue to integrate. It's really about how well you integrate, those ad experiences, and so whether it's from the beginning or later on, focusing on it's really important.
That makes a ton of sense. And Kristan from AudioMob, what's your take on this? Like, should there be a difference in approach when looking at it from a tech versus soft launch versus live ops life cycle in the product?
Well, in terms of my take on this, it's all based around the scale of the game, right? What game you're trying to make. Is it a quick hyper casual title that can be made in 2 to 3 months? Is it a casual game? Is it an MMO? So we've just really got to be contextualized in terms of what the scale of the game is that you're trying to make. And then, of course, when you're interweaving monetization, what teams need to speak to what people, what research that needs to actually be done. Take into account, for instance, if you're going to make a game and it's a hyper casual game and audio is obviously not as desired as other metrics, but then the fact that advertisers are willing to pay more for contextual data, i.e. if audio is on or off, or what audio is being listened to, it's these kind of things that really need to be brought in and taken very seriously at the beginning of the game, because it could change the whole shape of the game. So yeah, in terms of like how flexible you need to be in your approach, I would say that the core thing is it depends on what the genre of the game is, what the scale of it is.
I think that's a super valid point, and generally something that tends to go, that we hear over and over throughout this panel, is that there's no such thing as a one-size-fits-all solution, and you really need to look at what space you're inhabiting, whether it's a sports game versus an action shooter versus MMO versus casual or hyper casual. I'm kind of curious to hear you guys, like, what in your opinion triggered the creation of these new ad formats, and we're sitting here with quite a few of the people sort of pioneering a lot of new ad formats. So I would like to hear a little bit about sort of how and when you started building these formats, and what sort of like what problem were you trying to solve. And I think Kristan from AudioMob, let's stay with you and then take it throughout everyone.
So I mean, there's so many different problems, right, when it comes to ad tech, whether it's user experience, monetization, or whatever it is. But I guess the core problem is, like in my experience dealing with lots of different gaming clients and measuring the value of ads, Google and Facebook, what we started seeing is that there was constant complaints of there's too many ads in this game. You just see it review after review after review. And don't get me wrong, we're under no illusion. Video ads, interstitials, whether the ads intrusive, automatically triggered, or user triggered, I mean, they are brilliant sources of revenue. However, there is going to be a time where users are going to start looking for a different kind of ad experience, and I believe we're already seeing that. So the problem we want to try and solve is there a way to increase your CPMs without blocking the user's primary function? And it's the same thing as when you listen to a music podcast or something, and you've got an ad that comes in that blocks the primary user's function, which is listening to the music. We've taken that same approach and then put it into a game. So the idea is to create a trifecta where we're solving the issue for the advertiser, they're looking for audio inventory and they can't find it. Gaming is the biggest growing medium. We've got the gamer, the actual person playing the mobile game, where they are able to keep playing the game while knowing that they have to be monetized because the game is free. And then, of course, there's the game developer, where we want to increase revenue and provide incremental revenue without damaging retention. So that was the overall approach, and we kind of baked that into all of our product features going forward.
Great. And Dan, what's your take on this? Like, what caused you to go in a new direction here?
Yeah, so Similar situation to Kristan from AudioMob. So, we were speaking to a lot of game developers, and, some of the biggest problems they had were kind of retention, especially within kind of casual and hyper casual. Retention is key, and also monetization. If you're having kind of very intrusive ads, I kind of said this before, in the short term, you might make some money, but in the long term, you make less because, the players just won't come back and play your game because the ads are just too annoying. So I think, moving forward, this kind of non-intrusive style of advertising that you see from, from us, from Vungle, AdInMo, and AudioMob, it is definitely the way forward. And I think I've kind of said this before about, retention being key. And I think, for us, from speaking to a lot of games developers, retention seems to be one of the biggest problems. And if you can kind of solve those two problems of keeping players engaged in your game whilst also making money from it, because as I said before, most players don't pay for in-app purchases. They're typically converted through ads. That's why I think the AudioMobs and the AdInMos and Vungles of this world are doing a great job in terms of engaging people, increasing that retention, but also increasing monetization as well.
Excellent. And David?
Yeah, so I definitely agree with everything that's been said. When we first came along, right, our big innovation was, previously people had seen just a static full screen ad. They had to stare at it for like 5, 10, 15 seconds. We came along with video based on feedback from users and from publishers about what would make a more enjoyable, a more interactive user experience. And from there, moving on to playable ads, where you can actually essentially demo out a game. So again, much better experience, especially when it's tied into reported ads, where you really get the user's consent to show them that ad, to help out that developer and potentially find a really enjoyable experience. And then now we're seeing it evolve even more as we go into more immersive ads, where, for instance, we've worked with Activision and Call of Duty to actually build out a really immersive ad where you're transported into the world of Call of Duty, even within just the ad experience. It's really fantastic. And then from there, you can obviously see on where the ads might become more AR, VR related as those technologies mature. So becoming more immersive, more enjoyable, but still really looking for that consent from awarded ads. And then like I said, where it might have a shorter life cycle, those interstitial ads, those more intrusive ad experiences may actually be more appropriate to help that developer monetize.
Thanks. And Kristan from AdInMo?
Yeah, I think there was two moments. When I look back at my career, 2 moments that kind of just highlighted to me this need for a better way to do brand advertising inside of entertainment. I was the head of digital distribution in Asia for Paramount Pictures at the time that we released Transformers 3, and there's a scene in it. We focused on Asia. We focused on China. In particular, China was becoming a big market for us. And there's a scene in it where one of the people says, "Hold on, I'm going to save the world right now, but hold on, let me drink my milk yogurt drink." And then onwards. And it was just like, it was just so wrong for the moment. And then a little bit more laterally, I was working with the Eden Games. They're the developers of V-Rally, Need for Speed, Porsche, a bunch of racing games. And I was helping them do licensing for a bunch of the brands that were appearing in the game. So brands like McLaren, Pagani, Chevrolet, Mercedes, etc. And it was really frustrating to me because I'm like, hold on a second, we've got this amazing audience that these brands want to touch, that they want to reach, gamers, right? So hard to reach, the cord-cutting audience. And yet we're paying these guys to get their brands in the game. They should be paying us. How do we turn that equation around? And so we had inventory that was kind of obvious inventory. That'd be things like billboards in the game. And that was kind of a fairly easy one to think about. But then we thought about product placement and how to bring these some other types of brands in, whether it might be, again, tires, or it might be energy drinks, these sorts of things. And that was but it was very much a one-to-one relationship. So this one publisher, represented by me, developer had to go out and talk to all these different brands. There wasn't a marketplace to create these sorts of relationships on a many-to-many environment. And so those were probably the two kind of key moments that made me realize this need. And then AdInMo was created to help fulfill that need.
Great. I think overall, it seems like the starting point for your development tended to come from a place of frustration with the current environment, and then trying to shape that into something new. And another sort of big proponent of change, sort of globally speaking, tends to be destruction. And with the iOS 14 IDFA apocalypse looming just around the corner, I would really like to hear how you sort of individually see whether the new ad formats are better suited to handle this, and what your sort of supply side expectations are in terms of the changes that are coming with this. I know it's just been postponed, so no need to panic just yet, but I think it could be really interesting to hear your take on it. So Kristan, AdInMo, if you want to continue.
Yeah, sure. So, Eric Seifert said that IDFA is the hydrocarbon of the ad industry, right? And I would even kind of paraphrase that a bit more and say it's the polyunsaturated fat of the ad industry. We love it so much. We know it's bad for us, but we love it so much. We just can't give it up. I say, fucking bring it on. We set up AdInMo with the belief that the GDPR, COPA, CCP, et cetera, apologies, CCPC, that they would all get rid of IDFA, and I'm surprised it's taken as long as it has. So we built the company, we built our ad delivery mechanisms with the belief that that this type of deep targeting, deep tracking of users would disappear. We do certain things that allow us to know about that user, additional kind of contextual signals that help us understand who that user is. But yeah, I think this was long in coming. It's going to be a short-term pain for everybody, a little bit even for ourselves, of course, even though we had kind of foreseen this happening. But I think for the industry as a whole, this is a good thing. Look, I've got kids. I want to make sure that the ads that are being delivered to them are done in a way that is sensible to privacy, but still being able to target the ads that are meaningful to them. So yeah, I bring it on.
Nice, definitely putting a brave face, but it seems like you've been seeing it coming from a distance. How about you, Dan?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, in terms of the deep targeting of users and everything, when GDPR came in 2016, I think it was 2016, 2017, something like that. Everyone thought that this whole kind of cookie-based IDFA way of tracking users would go, because there's privacy is becoming a big issue now, and I completely understand that from the user's point of view. The fact that you have to opt in to now get specific targeted advertising probably means that most users, or quite a lot of users, won't do that. But the overall effect on the industry, I think, will be positive, and I think you'll see new innovations around the IDFA and ways to kind of target users that are different to IDFA, if that makes sense, kind of a way around it.
I guess that sort of plugs into what Kristan from AdInMo was talking about in terms of being more contextually driven, knowing where you're at displayed and who are the users likely to engage with that type of game. Sort of bringing us full circle back to it's genre specific. So players playing a hyper casual game are gonna behave and consume differently than players in an MMO. So Kristan from AudioMob, what's your take on this? Are you guys prepared for the change?
Absolutely. I think we're prepared for the change before we even knew this change was coming. And you heard it here first. When it comes to buying audio, I mentioned this in my talk earlier this morning, it's based on context, age, gender, location to a certain extent, and the listen through rates. It's all about the listen through rates pretty much. And I always remember back in January when we literally first just launched, and started talking to game developers and ad networks and educating them on the concept. And now IDFA has come around the corner. We're getting a lot of knocks on our doors in terms of, okay, how can we use contextual data in the realm of audio in order to increase CPMs? Because IDFA has got to dramatically change the industry. And I'm obviously not going to mention who the names are, but in terms of the large ad networks we're now working with, to guide them as to how to use audio in order to increase CPMs, so that when audio ads are mediated, they increase the CPMs for the game developers. We're pretty much all over it now, and it's certainly sped up the adoption of audio-based metrics. So I'd say, yeah, we're prepared, and I think it is going to affect us much less than a lot of the other industry incumbents.
So that's sort of that's a perfect segue to you, David, being sort of one of the more sort of older players on the block here. What's your take on this? Are you guys ready? And how are you planning to sort of deal with this?
Yeah, so I think like a lot of the other panelists were saying, right, the writing was kind of on the wall for some years now. We've been seeing that this is kind of the direction that it's been going in for a long time. From the introduction of, on the Apple side, you just being able to, to select do not track and, no longer pass back their IDFA. We've been anticipating this for a long time. But we've been predominantly a contextual targeting network for a long time. Anyways, we're not connected. We're not, like a Facebook or a Google, so we don't have anywhere near the behavioral targeting that they might have. We're not buying third-party user data either. So we've been predominantly contextual as well. So we feel like we're very well prepared for this world. In fact, we see extremely strong performance for users who've already selected do not track from several versions ago on iOS. But I think what this really means is that app developers are going to need to really focus with their ad tech providers on continuing to push forward content, creativity, ad innovation. Right? If you stay still, right, then some of your CPMs may drop, especially if you're working a lot with retargeting DSPs and behavioral targeting. Parties as well, then you will probably lose some revenue. However, if you really focus on continuing to improve the ad experience of things like moving from static to video to playable, each one of those we've seen 50% plus improvements to CPMs each time those have been introduced. So it's really the only way forward we see is that continuing to improve innovation, while dealing with partners who can really work in the contextual world, like my company Vungle. We've been preparing for this for a very long time. That's really the best way to deal with this.
And I think that's sort of the perfect framing for why everyone should pay attention to this panel in particular, because there's no better time than now to get on the wagon and try out some of these new tools, especially since everything, like the future is more uncertain now than it's ever been before. So now is a great time to try out some of these new systems. We're heading into the last part of the panel. So if anyone out there has some questions, now's the time to sort of type them in. But sort of to wrap this up, I'd really like to hear you guys come with sort of the best practice tips. So if you can pick out a genre, I know it's sort of genre specific. So there is definitely some I've let you guys get away with saying like, no, you can't do it because there's no one sort of magic bullet to solve retention or engagement or monetization. So I would like to challenge you to pick out a genre specifically, and come with actual best practice tips on where you've seen sort of a good either holistic approach encompassing a lot of ad systems or primarily sort of the ad systems that you're proposing, but sort of give some best practice tips for those of us in the audience interested to sort of to have some takeaways. So let's start with you, Dan. Are you up for it?
Yes, I am. So for some of the people that we've been speaking to, particularly in kind of the casual market, that are focusing on, say, puzzle type games or games that are that have a level of complexity to them. One of them is a game called Speed Builder, which I think would be a good example of this. And that essentially is, going around a runner that you can then go and you can then build buildings quite quickly, and a lot of the times there's a level of complexity there, and you don't know how to do something. So I think sometimes like us using in-game help videos would be helpful. I think also AudioMob would work well in that type of game, because when you fail, you can get an extra life and try again with an audio ad, and that doesn't really interrupt the gameplay. But I think I think a lot of the different ad formats could work in the casual market, especially things like Vungle and AdInMo because they're non-intrusive. Okay, that's kind of it from me.
Great, and I think Kristan from AudioMob, you got called out there. Do you have anything to add?
Sorry, there we go. Was that AdInMo or AudioMob?
Oh, AudioMob. Sorry, Kristan Facey from AudioMob. Thank you. You're muted, Kristan. Kristan, you're still muted.
It's in full flow there. Sorry about that. As we first came to the market, again, a lot of the stuff is hard to believe. You know, you integrate in under 10 minutes. Audio advertisers will really pay a $20 CPM for just audio. It is absolutely true, and I encourage the person to book a call with me directly so I can show you our actual dashboard and yield up so you can see it for yourself. Audio ads within the right game, within the right context, you can really see very, very high CPMs, because these advertisers, which have never before been exposed to the mobile space, they are getting more data than they can from radio, digital radio, and many other incumbents within the audio publishing space. So when you come to them with the fastest growing medium, which is mobile games, that provides 10x the amount of ad requests from compared to said audio publishers and more data, I mean, you've got a really high CPM. So yeah, I'd say definitely book a call with me and I can show you.
So I'm just gonna sort of latch onto you for a little bit, because you said with the right game and fit, and that's kind of cheating, because the goal was here to sort of point out a specific game genre in a specific space. So you know, what for you, Kristan, is the right game and the right fit? Like, do you have some sort of best in class example from your portfolio of games?
I would say the best fits are usually casual games and MMOs, or hyper casual games where you've got a longer session duration. So if the person is dying every 5 seconds, it's like a flip the bottle game or something, then maybe not so much. But for definitely casual and hyper and MMOs, this is definitely a more popular fit that we've seen. The reason being that if the user session is longer and the user is more engaged in the game, so for instance, they are physically doing an activity for longer than 30 seconds, longer than 60 seconds, then these are potential slots that you could use in order to implement for audio. So I'd definitely say casual and MMOs are definitely the best fit.
All right, thank you for answering that. And Kristan from AdInMo, what's your take on this? Like, what's the perfect use case for branded in-game videos for you?
Yeah, I'm going to do a quick cheat, first of all, and not answer it. Not answer it the way you're expecting, I should say. Rather than looking at it from the genre perspective, first of all, I think one thing that's really interesting to us that we're the only non-intrusive ad type that works offline as well. So when games are in airplane mode or whatnot. So we found a lot of use cases across all game genres in tier 2, tier 3 countries, markets where most people are playing in airplane mode. So developers can't monetize in those environments. So that's been a really interesting one for us. It's opened up a lot of different game types that we wouldn't have thought of, but also a lot of different types of game developers that wouldn't necessarily have thought about this, but they recognize that they can generate revenue even when these times where most of the users are offline. To answer your question, to a specific genre, look, the obvious ones are the racing games, the simulation games, et cetera, and really obvious, really easy fit. And it's a no-brainer there, and it works for everybody. I think where I get excited is the non-obvious ones. So I have a little bee in my bonnet right now about puzzle games. We have a couple of match-3 type games where either the background is an ad unit and you uncover it as you're playing, or some of the pieces themselves are ad units. And to me, this is really cool. I love the innovation here of trying something different, something that we hadn't thought of when we started the company. So those are the bits I get excited about.
Excellent answer. And David, how about you? What sort of game genre would you pull out as sort of being very highly performing in your space?
Yeah, so I mean, we generally find ads work across pretty much all the different genres, of games that we work with. But one in particular in the casual space, sort of in the hidden objects area, we've been working really closely with Vungle. It's a very large game developer. They made June's Journey, which was one of their hit games. And we incorporated, a rewarded ad experience so that users, especially going after a lot of those users who may not necessarily, make an in-app purchase, but are willing to opt in to get some coins, for instance. We saw really interestingly, I think as Kristan mentioned, our ARPDAU is a huge metric for publishers like Vungle. So we saw a 20 and 35% increase in ARPDAU for iOS and Android respectively, after we worked with them to incorporate those rewarded ads, especially playable ads that have a really, really high CPM performance. One thing that we've also found that's really interesting within that genre as well is that, as users get a taste for some of the, like premium coins, they oftentimes actually then make purchases. They don't just, come back every day for their, 5 free coins. They actually get a taste for what they can achieve in the game if they were to unlock, let's say, vastly more coins by making an in-app purchase. So that's why publishers really, really like those types of ad experiences. And as we've been saying a lot in here as well, it's opt-in, right? Where users are saying, I want to see this ad. I know I'm going to get a reward for it. I'm supporting the publisher as well. So we've seen that work really, really well for Vungle in the casual space.
And just to add to that, actually, a bit of personal experience from developing games on the studio side. In our games, we've seen that players who engage with rewarded videos, they tend to behave quite a lot similar to paying users in terms of retention, fall off, and engagement time. So there is definitely a sense that modern mobile gamers do have an understanding that what the transaction value is of what they're doing there. I think before we move to Q&A, I'd like to sort of quickly get you guys to sort of discuss, the integration platform space and what differences there are in terms of, iOS versus Android, but also, other platforms that are sort of looming or emerging. Stuff like, Apple TV has been around for a while. Is that a space that you've seen grow or being interesting at all? Sort of keeping in the thread of, being innovative and trying out new things. Are there any sort of examples where you've seen advancements in the platform space come from unexpected sides? Let's start with you, Kristan, AdInMo.
Yeah, I really can't answer that very directly because we're focused 100% on mobile. So the we're Unity SDK today and an Unreal version coming soon. So in theory, it does work on other platforms, and there have been some AR, VR, and PC-based games that have launched with AdInMo in them, but it's not something that we focus on that much, to be very honest. I think really where some of my interest to maybe sorry about that, to maybe answer that question a little bit indirectly is what are the development platforms that people are using for mobile? Unity, of course, is the 600-pound gorilla in the space. Unreal is next, hence why that's being released shortly. And then after that, we're curious to see where developers are looking, whether it's Lumberyard, whether it's Cocos, whether it's native, et cetera. That's where I think the interest in innovation comes in, and where that plays out as well. That starts to touch on things like HTML5 and things like that as well. But in terms of other platforms outside that space, like I said, I can't really answer that very well because we are 100% mobile focused.
Totally fair. How about you, Dan?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as Kristan from AdInMo. We kind of focus mainly on mobile and web. So, we have a Unity SDK as well, as I'm sure everyone else on this panel does. We've got an Unreal SDK coming out soon, but we also, because a lot of web games are built on JavaScript, we have a JavaScript SDK. So that is something that we're looking at. And I think integrating those kind of ad formats in web games would be quite interesting. And I think, there would definitely be a place for AdInMo and AudioMob in web games as well as mobile, and Vungle as well, of course.
Do you agree, Kristan? AudioMob in web games, is it a good fit?
Yeah, 100% for all the formats here. Absolutely. I mean, what we've been seeing is, I wouldn't say resurgence, but definitely a high amount of growth in HTML5 games, Unity obviously being a leader. We're also seeing codeless platforms as well, actually, and really starting to take off. Sure you know about the Quale deal with Buildbox, for instance. So there's lots and lots of different platforms that are just coming out of the woodwork, increasing the amount of games and monetization opportunities in the industry. So yeah, completely agree with that.
And I think, David, this is something that you touched upon earlier as well, that you're seeing increasingly in playables that there's starting to be innovation there. And you touched upon AR and VR. Is that something where you're seeing that sort of tie into other platforms as well?
Yeah, I mean, we think it's still pretty early days with AR and VR. Obviously, there's been some big advancements with Apple. You've seen Pokemon Go be a hit success. So, how do we integrate ads into that experience? One area that we've seen actually really take off is a little bit of convergence between what had previously been desktop and mobile. So we're a close partner with Microsoft, for instance, for instance, we advertise very heavily on what had previously basically been Windows desktop computers, which is a huge space. And I think with Apple's changes to Mac Catalyst, making it a lot easier to move your iPad OS games over to Mac, perhaps there's a world coming there as well. I don't think there's really any reason why somebody who prefers to utilize a Mac wouldn't also be interested in many of the same types of games that a mobile user. So we see that stuff as maybe the more immediate changes, but definitely AR and VR are going to be on the horizon. I think they've been on the horizon for quite a while now, but that technology will arrive, and just like anywhere, right? Where there are developers and publishers, they're going to need to monetize, right? And it may not really be the only way to just by paying for a game, right? As we've seen on mobile, ads are a huge part of the monetization step for these developers.
Very fair answer. Thanks for that. I think we have a few minutes left for QA, so I'm just gonna take it from the top. Got an anonymous attendee asking Christian Facey from AudioMob, sort of expressing suspicion on whether the ECPMs is it too good to be true? Are you making up numbers, Christian?
Yeah, so this is what I tried to tie earlier to the game design question. Just again, when it comes to when we were first launching in January, we were figuring out that audio CPMs are going through the roof. People are paying, a $20 CPM for an audio ad without a banner. I mean, back in the day, it used to be radio CPMs of $30, $40. So educating the market on this is definitely something that we're working on doing. And the main reason is again, you've got a CPM that is paid for, let's say, digital radio. And then AudioMob comes along and brings the fastest growing medium that can provide 10 times the amount of ad requests as a audio publisher, as well as all the contextual data like device ID, age, gender, location, and more specific audio on metrics that very, very large businesses would pay for, like record labels. So all of this combined is what leads to the increase in CPMs. And we are talking about in tier 1 territories, at least 2-3x of that $5 to $8 CPM that I mentioned. So it does sound too good to be true, but it absolutely isn't. And I would encourage this anonymous person to reach out to us on the website and have a call directly with me so I can show you.
Nice. And to tie into that, there's another question for you, Christian, from AudioMob, that whether you support all languages or if you're limited to English-speaking countries only.
Yep, so we're global and we support all languages, localized languages. So for instance, if an advertiser in India, for instance, has a localized ad and that gets sent through our platform, there's basically like a language string so that that ad will only get sent to specific people of a certain geo where they would want to hear an ad in their own language. So we support all most geos and most languages are supported outside of let's say China, for instance.
Great, and we have another question from Andy Cove asking, sort of saying that ads haven't really found their place on PC. Do you see any of these alternative ad formats more suited to that? And I'll just leave this open to the floor. So anyone of you yet, Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And I think that particularly AdInMo would be a great fit for some of the PC games because they're, people don't necessarily realize that it's ads. It's not in an intrusive style of advertising. And especially when you have premium games, when a user pays money up front for a game, they don't want to see ads. They don't want to have any of that difficulty of, or annoyance of advertising. So I think it's very difficult to serve ads in those type of games. However, if you do kind of product placement and on billboards, such as in, with AdInMo, I think that would be a really good fit for some PC games. Yeah, I mean, Christian from AdInMo, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, it's a fair comment, and I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense. Look, GTA 5, great example, right? We all play it. Their ads are so integral to the game experience that they created fake ads that are actually more fun, right? It's part of the fun of playing the game. So that experience is very definitely there. And Emil, to your point earlier, yes, there will be other platforms that we're all playing games on, and AdInMo will look to those, as will I'm sure everybody else in the panel here. You know, whether that's set-top boxes, whether that's somewhat portable devices like Nintendo Switch, or whatever. There's a lot of interesting opportunities, and I think to Andy's question, we're still figuring it out, right? This is very much a new space for a new type of ad unit. We're learning as we go, also.
Great, thanks. And I think, anyone else have anything to add?
Yeah, I would just add in, you know, obviously on the, you know, as I was mentioning before, on the Windows side, we've seen pretty tremendous success from the ad side, as we've seen some convergence on the operating system side for Windows. I think it's still very early days for Mac, for instance. You know, we're only just gaining the ability to really easily port over iPad games over to Mac. So I would not be surprised if we do see a bit of an explosion in terms of the more casual games coming to Mac and then being supported through, you know, any of the monetization opportunities that myself and the other panelists companies have to offer. So while Mac's been around for a while, I think we may be on the verge of seeing it take off a bit with Catalyst.
Excellent. I think we have time for just one more question. So that sort of ties into that, David. One of the attendees have asked if AdInMo and AudioMob, and in general, like, how does that tie in with MMPs? Do you think that MMPs like AppsFlyer and the others, would they be able to sort of track that traffic both on Mac when that sort of porting from iOS to macOS sort of comes to fruition, but also other sort of specifically AdInMo and AudioMob, whether you integrate with MMPs? I think Vungle integrates with MMPs.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, we're integrated with all the major MMPs out there. You know, obviously right now it's a very interesting time, I think, to be an MMP with some of the changes that are going on with Apple, some of the ones that are you know, rumored with Google as well. But yeah, you know, obviously we're going to continue to partner with them. We think that they add a lot of value to the advertisers that we work with. So we're definitely going to continue working with them. I think, you know, as we look at new platforms, you know, definitely, right, there's always going to be a need for advertisers to be able to measure their performance. And that's part of the whole benefit of, you know, mobile versus, you know, what you might have seen with, you know, traditional radio or traditional television, where, you know, you just threw your ads out there and you didn't really know what the direct response was going to be. You know, on mobile, because of a lot of the innovations that MMPs have brought to the game, you know, you can actually measure what an individual user or a cohort of users does based off of, you know, your ad spend to a particular network, for instance, in a particular publisher. So I think there's going to be space for them, and we look forward to working with them as we take on some new platforms as well.
Great. And Kristan, whoever comes first, do you agree? Like,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, MMPs provide a lot of value to the advertisers as well as game developers. And again, because we're the first to do this, we are setting up the infrastructure with multiple DSPs and launching our own DSP as well. And we're setting up our own mediation layer too. And the partners that we work with have integrated with the right MMPs, so that when we can pass back the data like App ID or Device ID or any of the other data points, we can start doing interesting things with attribution. So we are very careful with the partners that we pick as we build the infrastructure for the audio industry. So these metrics can be passed across.
Yeah, I'll just add a little bit to that. You know, I think what David said about it's interesting times for MMPs. I think that's, you know, like the Confucius saying, "May you live in interesting times." Very much so. And to Kristan's point, it's going to be about attribution now. And I think, you know, when you look at this, I think that's where the real value play is here. When you look at the spectrum of, at one end of the scale, you've got clickable ads that you track across multiple devices, multiple games, et cetera. And the other end of the spectrum, you've got a product placement in a movie. And, you know, and attribution across those varies. And so, you know, at AdInMo, we're very much towards the product placement in movie, sports sponsorship, these sorts of things, on purpose, as I said, because we kind of thought that much of this attribution would go away. So you're looking at probabilistic attribution, other types of attribution models, as opposed to, you know, your typical last click, first click, whatever. And so it's going to be interesting times for all of the MMPs. Obviously, they're smart guys. They're figuring this out well ahead of time. And it'll be interesting to see how they continue to play in the space and how we play with them.
Great, thanks. I've just been given a short extension by Stuart. Maybe do we have time for one last question, Stuart?
Yeah.
There's the thumbs up. Great. So one final question, and this sort of comes back to sort of the very actual problems that developers often face is, how would you monetize? There's one anonymous attendee who's asked, like, I have a game with a low DAU, and I have a very limited UA budget, and I only got one shot at testing this. And the attendee asking this, it seems like they're at their end of the rope. What advice would you give to someone who's looking at a low daily active user base, a limited UA budget? Like, how should they try and make a dent in monetization using ad solutions? Just open to the floor. It's okay if raise your hands if you feel like you got a good answer. Yeah, David?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, that's something that we talk about with a lot of our developers about, right, is, how do you make the most of your, of the users that you've got. I think that's actually true of, however large, of a developer you are. But, given that, you may have relatively low DAU at the moment, you really want to focus on an ad experience that isn't going to cause any further churn. So you definitely aren't going to want to lose any, any users. So looking at, like I mentioned before, whether it's less intrusive formats, like banners, for instance, or rewarded ads that have opt-in from the users that can then, fund continued game development to keep users engaged, to fund some UA. I saw as was mentioned on there, because you're going to want to continue bringing users to your game as well. I think that's really essential, right? And then, you're not going to have time necessarily to talk to every single ad SDK, so you're going to want to interview them and basically ask this exact question. And I'd also ask for maybe some specific examples where they've actually found success in a publisher that might be a bit similar to you.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I'll jump in here just briefly. And yeah, I mean, it's a tough one, right? So every game has that question: how do we make more money with limited UA? And I think for this particular question, it's maximizing the value of your existing users, as David said. Reduce churn, increase session links, play links, and focus on ARPDAU of your existing users. That's probably going to be the quick fix if there is one.
And just to add one more thing, I mean, we're not just working with large studios, but we're working with single guys and girls, just working out of their bedroom, really trying to do the grinds and create their own studio. And we're seeing a combination. Some of these smaller studios are using a combination. So they're using audio video, they're using billboards, they're using us audio. And what we're seeing is you can take advantage of all of these different formats, because until you launch, you're never really quite sure what is going to stick with the user. So testing multiple formats together, from what we've seen, is definitely a good approach that you should consider.
Great. Dan, do you have anything to add?
Not really. I think the question was answered really well by everyone else. I completely agree that if as a developer, one-man band indie, it can be very difficult to grow your game if you have limited UA and limited users. But I think definitely focusing on kind of the non-intrusive ad formats and trying to increase session length, as Christian from AdInMo said, and really try and just increase your the revenue from the users that you've got, which can then be reinvested into UA for further users, and then it becomes a cycle. But I completely agree. A/B testing is definitely one to do that, and do that as much as possible.
Excellent. Thank you for that, and thank you to this amazing panel. We've run out of time, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What a terrific job you've done there, and your guests. Thank you, David, Dan, Christian, and Kristan. Kristan, you've been here for hours. You've done a tremendous shift. That was a very rigorous and thorough examination of the new ad formats. Thank you very, very much. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.